and we understand a lot of the injustice.
Wrongfully removed my daughter and her partner.
They removed my two boys, who are 12 and 13, from...
I still don't understand.
I was laughed at by the department. I was laughed at by police.
Me wanting to move out and be independent.
Keeping children safe should be an issue which concerns us all. How we go about achieving this is a vexed issue. Those who are impacted by the child protection system often don't have a voice or are simply not heard. For the first time, you're about to hear the voices of parents, a child who has exited care, an Indigenous man who was in care and has had his own children removed, a grandmother, an advocate, and an academic. It is important that we all hear their voices.
You know, to have 2,500 Aboriginal children in Victoria alone in out-of-home care on any given night of the year, it raises serious questions about what's going on here, and are we seeing the flow-on effects of those earlier stolen generations now?
There's a lot that they will do in deceit and dishonesty to fit an agenda. They side up very easily with one parent over another.
They were saying that I was a suspect in my daughter's death and that my children in their risk assessment were at risk of death in my care, which was obviously untrue, being that I was not a suspect nor caused any of Talon's injury.
As a parent, we don't know these causes and all of these acts and the jargon that they use in a courtroom, and we don't understand our rights as parents.
I couldn't understand why she kept going on about the drug screens, because I've got toxicologist reports with all of the negative screenings. But this new one is now saying that there's no issues with the drug screens that she can see. It's domestic violence. And I said, well, that's a bit confusing because I'm not in a relationship. I don't have anything to do with the fathers. I've done violence counselling. I've done the domestic violence course. But she turned around and she said, well, it's just, I have a long history of being in domestic violence relationships.
Child protection came in and wrongfully removed my daughter and her partner, who were protecting the kids.
Historically, the faults of parents were commonly depicted as moral failings. Godlessness, vice and immorality, drunkenness, slovenliness, lack of motivation. Even destitution was understood as a moral failing rather than an economic or social problem. A fundamental aim of the child welfare system was to prevent parents passing these moral faults onto their children.
There's too much power. There's too much power. The people that, the caseworkers and the case managers are able to do things without any real oversight.
It is difficult, though, to change a system when the stakeholders within that system are voiceless.
I've experienced sexism, I've experienced discrimination, I've experienced dishonesty. They don't want to liaise with me or communicate with me on any sort of civil level.
They were more focused on anything that excluded me because I have a really close relationship with my father.
But they've taken all the ones who care out of their lives and left them. And you call that child protection? That's not child protection.
The children are so traumatised when they're removed from families, and the families become traumatised themselves because they just feel that they have no way of resolving what's said to be issues, and very often these issues are blown out of all proportion by the department.
I fully endorse the words of Sue Ann Hunter, the chair of Family Matters. Quote, "It's time to completely change this broken system that is not working for our kids." And I would add to her words, a broken system that's not working for parents.
There are aspects of this system which need to be changed. There are voices which need to be heard. The question we all need to be asking ourselves is, what prevents a system such as the child protection system from being a system which is caring for kids, looking after children who are at risk, and a system which at all costs will choose to remove a child from the family as opposed to working with that family in order to have that child remain with them.
The stuff she was going over was really confusing, and it was also like, I don't know if the word's right, but like re-traumatizing. Like she was bringing stuff up that I just didn't think was relevant to my children, like my brother, who I hadn't had contact with since I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, you know, my first child. Anyway, so this child psychiatrist wrote a report about me, an adult, saying that she thought I had BPD, that she thought that I was at fault for my daughter's death because I was raped as a child. She even said those exact words in court and then got in trouble from the magistrate. She wrote that, you know, my sister had molested me, which wasn't true. She wrote that my dad used to beat me up, which isn't true. My dad is, like, if you want to talk about the best type of parent a child can have, that's my dad.
Well, there's a body of research on the impact on children of being separated from their parents. The impact on parents who lose their children to the welfare system is not well researched. Some impacts are clear, however. Welfare authorities acted as if parents had forfeited not only their legal rights, but also their moral rights over the upbringing of their children in out-of-home care. They had no say in their children's schooling, health or religion, nor crucially in decisions to separate siblings from one another. In the 1960s, separation of siblings occurred in 60% of cases in Victoria. Sometimes siblings were sent to different parts of the state, making it hard for struggling parents to visit all of their children. We know not only that many of those separated children didn't see their siblings after that, but that also a large number of parents didn't see their children after they came out of care because of that separation.
Some of these caseworkers just have no people skills whatsoever. Many of them are just on a power trip. It seems like they get a kick out of removing children from their families, and basically antagonising and terrorising the parents. That's what it comes down to. We talk about gaslighting often, which is sort of saying one thing and doing another, or getting the parents' hopes worked up and then pulling the rug out from under those hopes. We need to be having these conversations. We need for the public to be more aware of what's really going on.
All these social workers, I feel, go to uni, step out of uni, you know, mine in particular, I can only speak from who I've had, I suppose, but 23 years old and, you know, writing reports on just stuff that I don't believe she really has, she's not qualified to really, and I believe they have to say in what goes when it comes to parents and seeing their children. I think there are good social workers out there. I think they need to be more educated on working with the parents, but once they've got their own opinion of whether or not they think you're a good parent or not, I've done everything, Tony, that I've needed to do, that I need to change. My changes have been made.
They don't take into account the children, the foster carers, the carers, like, you know, the grandparent carers. You know, my dad's taken a financial loss of like 50 grand just a year. And, you know, DHS say things like they'll pay for childcare. They don't. We're still arguing over just under 3 grand that has been out of my dad's pocket that he was told wouldn't be spent. And then, you know, you've got this carer who, when she was giving me my daughter's stuff, crying because, you know, she'd done a permanent care assessment. She was told all these awful things about me. She was told that, you know, Chalman had died and that I was a suspect and that I was a drug addict. Even when I asked to have 2 close friends assessed as a carer when I realised they were 100% removing her, and they told these friends that I had tested positive for ICE, which is untrue. We had to tell child protection workers to cease speaking until they disengaged my ex-partner, who I still currently have an IVO against, from the conversation, because they were discussing things like my mental health and, you know, stuff. And then the rest of the conversation was just about my son, which, you know, no relation to him at all. So why was he privy to that information?
Do I believe that we would have been best in the way the environment was compared to being in care? Definitely. All my siblings, even though that we would have, you know, the abuse probably would have escalated, I do believe that I would have rather had been in that situation, because all my siblings would have been together. Child safety, I do believe that they had good intentions when they first came in, but then as we grew older, they really separated us and those core values of family, and a lot of those things just went with it. As I came out of care, they just, you know, as you get older, it's like when you're a kid in there, they have their priorities. When you're a kid, it's like they have a certain amount of checklists that they have to tick off. And if you're really young, they are pretty much sorted. So they know that they've got food, shelter, clothing, you know, certain things that a child can get or should be able to get by a parent. Not all parents can provide such a thing. But child safety swoop in, and it's like they take control of everything. And the child believes that child safety is kind of like the savior at that point, because child safety were able to provide a lot more things than the child, a lot more things than the parent to the child. So it's kind of like they're good for a while, but then as you get older, you start to notice things, especially in your teenage years. I think that it was quite evident at that point, especially for me. It was really that independence that really drove me out of care. And I think that they have this hold on you. You know, they want to keep you, you know, dependent, and they want to focus on what's right for you. And you just need to get to a point where you're able to say, no, I know what I want to do. If I want to move out, I'll move out. Like, everyone needs to know what the laws surrounding, you know, youngsters, different age brackets, because that is important, and child safety don't want to let them know what their rights are.
We believe that one of these issues rests with the lack of knowledge they have as to the damage they actually cause. That having conversations with parents about the way social workers and caseworkers work will help the department and the workers to understand what it is they're doing that is unhelpful in the first place.
Reclaiming the lost rights through the development of stronger advocacy networks of parents with lived experience, acting as parent advocates, mentors, peers and advocates, activists. Secondly, making stronger use of the rhetoric of parents' rights. The rhetoric's all on the side of the family, the core unit of society, according to UN conventions and Australian policy documents. So, thirdly, developing a charter of rights as a tool, including visiting rights, rights to expect siblings to be kept together, rights to information about their children's health and education, how they're faring at school, right to maintain contact and so on. You could draw up a list, as Clan has done, of 10 rights of children or former children in care. So a right for parents could be a useful tool. Challenging the historic records retrospectively. As I said at the beginning, all the documents primarily were written by other people about parents. Is it not time to turn the clock back and write your own documents? One of our clan members had a particularly interesting idea that struck me as being useful, though it might be too late for many. All parents should be encouraged, if not required, to write a letter to their children who are placed in out-of-home care, giving their account of why they're not able to raise their children. And that would undermine that those deceptive claims that parents are not interested in them or are dead. Destabilizing and challenging the conventional histories by writing their own memoirs and accounts. We've got a collection of over 150 memoirs published by care leavers, people who are formerly in care, telling their side of the story, so to speak. And I imagine that would be a very useful thing for parents to tell their side of the story. And finally, seeking redress, including apologies and counselling for historic maltreatment and breaches of rights. On behalf of those yet to enter the system, demanding undertakings that authorities will get it right in the future.
He got put in jail and mum couldn't cope. You know, she had no supports around her, no family support there and that. And because of the breakdown with her being removed, you know, she was too ashamed to go home to the family and that. So she was put in a mental hospital, Roselle Mental Hospital, and that's where they took me away from her. Never saw her again until I was 22. I caught the train up from Melbourne. I made contact with her through people in Fitzroy, and one of the gentlemen that used to run Aboriginal housing in Fitzroy, when he realised who I was, he picked up the phone and he dialed my mother. I didn't realise he was ringing my mother at that stage because they used to knock around Fitzroy together. And he said, I've got someone here that needs to talk to you. And he handed the phone over to me and he said, here, talk to your mother. And yeah, we were both a bit lost for words for a while. And I got on the train, and 10:30 that night I met my mother and my sisters and a couple of cousins and aunties and uncles for the first time. Oh, it was scary actually, because you know, I didn't know whether they'd want me or not. I didn't know anything about why I wasn't with them, you know, growing up and that. Never been told the circumstances or anything. So, you know, I thought maybe they wouldn't want me there and I wouldn't be able to fit in, but it also felt like they actually fitted in somewhere for the first time in my life. I belonged somewhere.
They tried to approve his living with a girlfriend at 14 years old. And I vented my concerns because all of the children, my two twins and the three stepsons, had all lived with me. They'd all been placed with me by child protection orders. But when it got to this stage here, Child Protection just wanted to move him on as quick as they could. It led to him now, still currently, he's been locked up in youth detention 3 times. He battles with substance misuse. He's 16 years old. And Child Protection they don't care. It breaks my heart. I've been in that boy's life since he was 6 years old. And I can barely even communicate with him these days because he's that far off the rails.
That they don't understand trauma, the impact their decisions have on parents and children. That they see parents as being evil or bad parents and don't see any opportunities whereby they can help the parents to improve their parenting. They label, categorise, place into a box those parents who they deem are ineffectual or poor parents. Instead of looking for opportunities to be able to help parents so that they can parent their children, social workers and caseworkers want to have a view which fits with societal's views of a certain group of people. Whether you're Indigenous, and clearly a lot of the children that are removed are from Indigenous families, whether you're poor, whether you're on a benefit, whether you have a disability, all of those aspects are the focus for social workers and caseworkers. If you have a mental health problem, if you are using drugs, if you are in or have been in a domestic violent relationship, if you fit any of those categories, then you are a bad parent. We know that it's not true, that because someone has had certain experiences in their lives, that they're going to continue to have those experiences. That's a myth. But it is important, it seems, for the department to hold on to those myths. the belief that a parent cannot change, that they won't change, that they've had a few poor relationships or they've been continually using drugs, means that that parent or person is never going to be able to have a good relationship and will always continue to use drugs, is a fallacy. However, it supports the belief that the government is doing the best that they can for children by having them removed from those parents who have had or may have those particular issues. It is almost as if the department cannot accept that parents can change, that people can change.
I think with, especially to do with my wife, because she was there trying to care for the children and I was out working, you see. So the supports I believe that should have been implemented would have been like in the home, people that come in just to help around. You know how the NDIS is implemented now?
I'm just really lost how much power these people have on, you know, I mean, there's a lot of assumptions made and now it's just like they're just trying to really push me. I mean, they say horrible things. I was told that normally I could take my kids to the movies in the holidays. These holidays just gone. I was told that they had to ask the supervisor. She got back to me in a few days after and said to me that, yeah, look, sorry, we can't let you take these. And I said, well, what? And she turned around and said to me, well, because your kids can only tolerate you once a month. So that's why. And I was just like, what do you mean? That's really horrible. You know, like my kids love to see me. They're asking, you know, they've especially from January when I was still having weekly contact, my kids would always ask, like, you know, are they coming home soon? It was looking like they were coming home. They were just waiting for the baby to settle in and then they were going to slowly come home. But, you know, I've always had supervised access with two older boys. They're getting told things that I don't believe they should be getting told. Like my oldest one was told that the reason they aren't coming home is because I can't keep them safe because I'm still doing positive drug screens, which was an absolute lie. Now my kids, mind you, back in February when my kid taken, my kids had no idea about drugs. My kids do now. My kids know now that I had a drug addiction. But that's through the department telling them, not from me. I don't believe it at all. I've had a good relationship with my kids. And this is why I believe, because my access is now only once a month. And it's full on supervised. I mean, I can't even, if we, you know, go to the park where we meet, I normally walk up the road with them and they're not all together anymore. My access with them is all singly. I would normally be able to, you know, at least go to the counter or go to the fridge with them, and the worker would stand back at the door. But now they won't. I can't say them being here anything, which, you know, it's hard because I know that my kids don't. It's not they don't want to see me or don't want to come home, because they do. But the department aren't even letting that come out from my kids' mouths.
I've experienced plenty of terrible things in my life, but to be labelled as a violent parent or a violent partner, abusive, a domestic violence abuser, family violence abuser, you can't compare that. It completely writes you out of the lives of your children. It completely tarnishes your whole character and your person, and you have no leg to stand on when it comes to that. No one wanted to listen to me. No one wanted to hear me. I couldn't express my side of the story or provide any information or evidence to verify that these claims were not true. As soon as that family violence intervention order came about, I was the worst guy in the world, and I was no fit parent in the eyes of the department. And I mean, I was laughed at by the department. I was laughed at by police. It completely broke me. And I like to consider myself a very strong-willed person and a go-getter. I'm a leader, not a follower. And I was finding myself just locking myself in my bedroom and just breaking down on a daily basis because no one wanted to hear me.
You know, I spent 2 years being told basically that I was a terrible person and an unfit mother. The amount of times they told me I was unfit was just ridiculous. They just love that word, I swear. And I just think, you know, I did everything I could, as informed as I was and with the knowledge I had. And I said that to them, and I'm like, if there's, you know, what are your concerns? What areas can I build on? You know, and they wouldn't give me any answers. Like, you know, I'd end up in literal arguments in emails with one of the workers, and then, you know, phone calls, and the amount of times they'd misrepresent or write misleading or admitting things regarding the case. It's just a lot. For it to be recognised even in a court that they've intentionally lied, basically. I mean, you know, there was other things. The worker admitted to releasing confidential documents regarding my police history, my mental health and other things, releasing them without my consent. You know, but for all that to be recognised in court and there's zero repercussions for the individual worker who does it, and knowing that the only reason they're not working with families anymore is because they were promoted, is disturbing, and it's scary because of the power they have.
The Child Protection Department, they don't admit when they've done wrong. I don't think that somebody who comes in and removes a child that then wants to work with you and you find a clashing of heads, they need to be more realistic, really. They need to walk in there and say, we're really sorry that you had to go through this. We are emotionally trying to support you and we are in the benefits of your child. Because when you have that clash, it's very, very hard to move past it. So the independent support programs and social workers that I want to see a part of this will have, it's going to be difficult, and you're going to find in those areas situations that you just, you know, it's a very fine line to walk, and just offering support and constant positive reinforcement is a really good idea.
We need to confront the issues that are the real issues. Poverty isn't the issue. Where a person lives isn't an issue. Racial issues are not the primary issue. It is how those people that are the decision makers make decisions based on those types of issues. Imagine for a moment if a worker was able to understand the parent. Imagine what it would be like for the parent to be heard, to believe that they're understood, for them to know that the person they're speaking with is there to support them, and eventually they will either have their children returned to them or they will not have their children removed in the first place. Imagine for a moment if that relationship could be built. What a difference that would make. The cooperation, the sense of unity, the sense of purpose would be there, which would mean that the chances of reaching an appropriate conclusion, an appropriate return of child, or a child not being removed, would be probable. So there's much work that we need to do, not to pour money into a system that's already broken, but to change the mindset, the way people choose to work within this system. That is what's going to make a difference.